$1.2 billion mining deal that could have transformed Ghana's industrial future, killed overnight. A local company's dreams crushed, foreign mining giants circling like vultures. And at the center of it all, one of West Africa's richest untapped bauxite deposits, sitting there like a prize waiting to be claimed. What you're about to hear isn't just another business story. It's a tale that cuts to the heart of Africa's resource curse, our struggle for economic independence, and the hard choices our leaders face in a world where capital rules everything. Ghana just made one of the most controversial decisions in recent African mining history, and the implications stretch far beyond its borders. So buckle up, because we're diving deep into why Ghana tore up a billion-dollar deal with a local company to court foreign giants, and what this means for the future of African resource sovereignty. The news hit financial markets like a thunderbolt. Ghana had officially terminated the $1.2 billion bauxite lease awarded to Rockshore International, a Ghanaian company that had been positioned as the champion of local empowerment and industrial self-sufficiency. In one swift government announcement, years of planning, promises, and patriotic rhetoric were reduced to nothing more than a historical footnote. But here's what makes this story so compelling. This wasn't just a routine contract cancellation. This was Ghana essentially declaring that its mining future would no longer be shaped by small domestic players, but by international heavyweights with the capital, technology, and global networks to turn ambitious visions into reality. The target of all this drama? The Ninahin Hills in central Ghana, a geological treasure trove holding an estimated 376 million metric tons of bauxite. To put that in perspective, we're talking about one of the largest untapped deposits in West Africa, enough raw material to feed aluminum refineries for decades and potentially transform Ghana into a regional industrial powerhouse. This deposit was supposed to be the foundation of Ghana's first truly integrated aluminum industry. Not just digging up ore and shipping it overseas, which has been Africa's curse for centuries, but building refineries, creating jobs, and keeping value addition right here on the continent. The promise was intoxicating. New employment opportunities, modern infrastructure, fresh revenue streams, all driven by a Ghanaian company taking the driver's seat. Yet within hours of the termination announcement, a very different picture began to emerge. Dubai-based Emirates Global Aluminum, one of the world's top aluminum producers, confirmed it had signed a memorandum of understanding with Ghana's state-owned Aluminum Development Corporation. Chinese companies too started making quiet inquiries behind the scenes, exploring partnerships that could unlock not just mining operations, but full-scale refining infrastructure. The timing couldn't be more critical. Global aluminum demand is absolutely exploding, driven by the electric vehicle revolution, renewable energy grid expansion, and aerospace manufacturing boom. For a country like Ghana, sitting on an estimated 900 million metric tons of bauxite reserves, this isn't just about mining anymore. It's about positioning itself at the center of the new industrial economy. To understand why this deal collapsed so spectacularly, you need to grasp the complex web of law, politics, and ambition that strangled it from the beginning. The Rockshore International Agreement had been living in legal limbo for years, missing the one crucial element that validates major mining agreements in Ghana: parliamentary ratification. Here's where it gets interesting. Following a landmark 2019 Supreme Court ruling, any mineral lease not formally approved by Parliament is automatically null and void. Rockshore's deal fell squarely into that category, but the government's strategic silence on the matter kept it technically alive until now. The structure of the deal seemed perfect on paper. Rockshore International, a Ghanaian company, held a commanding 70% stake in the joint venture known as the Asante Bauxite Company. The remaining shares were split between the state-owned Ghana Integrated Aluminum Development Corporation with 20%, and the government directly holding 10%. It was a model that looked patriotic, responsible, and aligned with Ghana's development goals. But behind the patriotic rhetoric, the numbers simply didn't add up. The project required billions in financing to build not only the mine at Ninahin, but also an alumina refinery. Capital-intensive infrastructure that no local firm had successfully executed in Ghana's history. Rockshore promised they could deliver, but after 3 years, the financing never materialized at the scale required. Progress stagnated, and the project remained mostly on paper with no significant development milestones achieved. This lack of visible progress became increasingly problematic as Ghana watched its neighbors pull ahead. Guinea, in particular, had signed multiple billion-dollar agreements with Chinese and Middle Eastern investors during the same timeframe, expanding both mining output and refining capacity. While Guinea was shipping millions of tons of bauxite annually to China's aluminum refineries, Ghana was still debating contract terms and struggling with bureaucratic hurdles. Inside government circles, frustration mounted. There were whispers about opportunity costs. Was keeping Rockshore in the driver's seat worth the price of watching global players actively seek new bauxite sources as supply chains shifted worldwide? By early 2025, as Ghana's economic agenda began emphasizing rapid industrialization and foreign investment attraction, patience with the Rockshore model finally ran out. With Rockshore now out of the picture, let's examine what makes Ghana's bauxite deposits so attractive that global heavyweights are rushing to get involved. Few countries are as strategically positioned as Ghana when it comes to this critical ore. Beneath its soil lies an estimated 900 million metric tons of bauxite, placing the country 7th globally in known reserves. Yet for decades, Ghana has struggled to convert this geological advantage into industrial power, leaving much of its bauxite wealth either locked away or exported in raw form with minimal value addition. It's a pattern that should sound familiar to anyone who studied Africa's resource history. We dig it up, ship it out, and buy back the finished products at premium prices. The Nyenahin Hills deposit represents something different, a chance to break that cycle. At 376 million metric tons, it's not just large, it's strategically positioned and contains high-quality ore, perfect for modern aluminum production. This single deposit holds enough material to feed a modern alumina refinery for decades, supporting downstream industries from packaging to aviation. But accessing that potential isn't simply about extraction. It requires building an entire ecosystem capable of processing bauxite into alumina and eventually smelting it into aluminum. That ecosystem has always been Ghana's missing link, and it's exactly what makes this story so significant for the broader African development narrative. Ghana's aluminum dreams actually date back to the 1960s, when President Kwame Nkrumah established the Volta Aluminum Company, VALCO, as part of his industrialization agenda. But decades of underinvestment, shifting political priorities, and an over-reliance on raw exports stalled that progress. As a result, Ghana's neighbors, particularly Guinea, pulled far ahead, becoming global hubs for bauxite supply, especially to China's booming aluminum industry. The cancellation of the Rockshore lease has paradoxically given Ghana a chance to reset this dynamic. Rather than inching forward with a local firm struggling for capital, the government is now actively seeking partners who bring not just mining experience, but full industrial capacity. These are companies that don't just extract ore, they build refineries, power plants, ports, and rail networks. This brings us to the most intriguing player in Ghana's new bauxite game, Emirates Global Aluminum. When Ghana announced it was seeking new partners to unlock its bauxite potential, EGA's name surfaced almost immediately. And for those who follow global resource dynamics, this interest is far from accidental. EGA is the world's largest premium aluminum producer, controlling every stage of production from mining bauxite to refining alumina and smelting aluminum. Its entry into Ghana's bauxite landscape signals that this is not just another mining contract, but a strategic shift with far-reaching global implications. EGA's journey into West Africa has been complicated and politically sensitive. Back in 2022, the company had quietly evaluated investment opportunities in Ghana but hesitated. The reason? It already had existing operations in Guinea, where it held a lucrative mining license. For years, EGA sourced bauxite from Guinea to feed its massive facilities in the United Arab Emirates, where it operates one of the world's largest aluminum smelters. But EGA was cautious about appearing to divert focus from Guinea, particularly at a time when African countries have become increasingly sensitive about resource nationalism and foreign companies playing nations against each other. This diplomatic balancing act is something every major resource company has to navigate in modern Africa. Fast forward to 2025, and the equation has changed dramatically. Guinea revoked EGA's mining license after delays in constructing a promised alumina refinery, leaving EGA scrambling to secure alternative supply chains. Suddenly, Ghana's Nyenahin Hills deposit, with its high-quality ore and untapped development potential, looked like the perfect solution. Within weeks of Ghana canceling Rockshore's lease, EGA signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Ghana Integrated Aluminum Development Corporation. While non-binding, this MOU marks a significant step forward, with EGA now formally exploring investments in both mining and refining infrastructure in Ghana. Why is EGA so critical for Ghana's ambitions? First, it brings capital at unprecedented scale. Building an integrated aluminum industry requires billions, not just to extract ore, but to construct refineries, build transport links, ensure consistent power supply, and develop downstream industries. Few companies have both the financial strength and integrated expertise to deliver all of that. EGA does. Second, EGA offers market security in a notoriously volatile commodity sector. Aluminum prices are heavily influenced by global economic cycles, trade wars, and energy costs. By aligning with a vertically integrated giant, Ghana gains an offtake partner that can guarantee steady demand and more stable pricing for its alumina and aluminum output, providing some insulation from market turbulence. Third, EGA's interest strengthens Ghana's geopolitical positioning. In recent years, resource deals across Africa have been dominated by China, often leading to debates over debt dependence and strategic leverage. By courting a Middle Eastern partner like EGA, Ghana can diversify its international alliances, reduce over-reliance on any single bloc, and create more balanced competition for its resources. Of course, we can't discuss African resource development without addressing the elephant in the room: China's massive presence across the continent. Chinese companies have been remarkably active in Ghana's mining sector for years, and they're certainly not sitting idle while other players position themselves for the bauxite opportunity. China's approach to African resources has been comprehensive and strategic. Rather than simply buying commodities, Chinese state-backed enterprises have invested in entire supply chains, mines, processing facilities, transportation infrastructure, and even worker training programs. This integrated approach has made China an attractive partner for many African governments seeking rapid development. In Ghana's case, several Chinese mining giants have reportedly begun engaging quietly behind the scenes, exploring partnerships that could unlock not just mining operations, but full-scale refining infrastructure. The Chinese model typically involves significant upfront investment in exchange for long-term supply agreements, often backed by concessional loans and tied to broader infrastructure development packages. This creates an interesting dynamic for Ghana. Having multiple international players, Middle Eastern, Chinese, and potentially others, competing for access to its bauxite resources puts the government in a stronger negotiating position than dealing with a single dominant partner. It's a situation that many African leaders have learned to leverage effectively. However, this competition also raises important questions about the terms and conditions of these partnerships. Will foreign investors prioritize local value addition and job creation, or will they focus on rapid extraction and export? Will technology transfer and skills development be genuine priorities, or just talking points in contract negotiations? Ghana's bauxite pivot is unfolding against a backdrop of broader changes across Africa's resource landscape. Across the continent, there's growing recognition that the old model of resource extraction, dig it up, ship it out, hope for the best, simply isn't working for African development. Countries like Botswana have shown what's possible when resource wealth is managed strategically. Botswana leveraged its diamond resources to build one of Africa's most stable and prosperous economies, investing mining revenues in education, infrastructure, and economic diversification. Ghana appears to be seeking a similar transformation with its bauxite resources. But the challenge is immense. Building integrated industries requires more than just ore and investment capital. It demands stable energy supplies, efficient transportation networks, skilled labor forces, and supportive regulatory environments. Ghana's infrastructure gaps, particularly in rail transportation and power generation, will need urgent attention if the country is to fully realize its aluminum ambitions. There's also the question of regional coordination. West Africa's bauxite resources are distributed across multiple countries: Guinea, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and others. Rather than competing purely against each other, there's potential for regional cooperation that could create a more powerful negotiating bloc with international partners. This is where leadership vision becomes crucial. The kind of Pan-African thinking that leaders like Ibrahim Traoré represent in Burkina Faso, prioritizing African interests, regional integration, and genuine sovereignty, offers a template for how resource-rich countries might approach these challenges differently. Any honest discussion of large-scale mining development must address environmental and social impacts. Bauxite mining, like all extractive industries, carries significant environmental risks if not properly managed. Strip mining can destroy ecosystems, affect water quality, and displace communities that have lived on the land for generations. Ghana has had mixed results with environmental management in its mining sector. The country's gold mining industry, while economically important, has faced serious challenges with illegal small-scale mining, water pollution, and forest degradation. Learning from these experiences will be crucial as the government moves forward with bauxite development. The social dimension is equally important. Mining projects often promise job creation and community development, but the reality is frequently more complex. Local communities may find themselves displaced or marginalized while the benefits flow primarily to urban centers and international partners. For Ghana's bauxite development to be truly successful, and for it to serve as a positive model for other African countries, these environmental and social considerations must be front and center in any new partnership agreements. This means robust environmental impact assessments, genuine community consultation processes, and binding commitments to local employment and skills development. What's happening in Ghana with this bauxite decision reflects broader tensions about African resource sovereignty in the 21st century. On one hand, there's the desire for local control, domestic value addition, and resource nationalism. On the other hand, there's the reality that developing modern extractive and manufacturing industries requires enormous capital investments, advanced technology, and access to global markets. This tension isn't unique to Ghana or even to Africa. Countries around the world grapple with balancing foreign investment needs against sovereignty concerns. But for Africa, with its history of colonial exploitation and resource extraction, these decisions carry additional historical and emotional weight. The key question is whether partnerships with international giants like EGA can be structured in ways that genuinely benefit African development rather than simply perpetuating new forms of resource extraction. This requires sophisticated contract negotiation, strong regulatory oversight, and political leadership committed to long-term national interests rather than short-term gains. Ghana's experience with this bauxite development will be closely watched across Africa. If successful, it could provide a template for how resource-rich African countries can leverage international partnerships to build genuine industrial capacity. If it fails to deliver meaningful local benefits, it will serve as yet another cautionary tale about the challenges of translating natural resource wealth into broad-based development. The economic implications of Ghana's bauxite pivot extend far beyond the mining sector itself. An integrated aluminum industry could generate thousands of skilled jobs, expand the country's industrial base, and attract downstream industries like cable manufacturing, automotive parts production, and packaging. More importantly, it could enhance Ghana's fiscal resilience by diversifying export earnings beyond volatile gold and cocoa markets. For a country that has historically been dependent on a narrow range of commodity exports, this diversification represents a crucial step toward economic stability and growth. The regional competitive dynamics are equally significant. Guinea has long dominated West Africa's bauxite exports, primarily shipping raw ore to China for processing. If Ghana succeeds in building an integrated aluminum industry, it would not only compete with Guinea for market share, but also offer an alternative supply chain model, one anchored in local processing and regional value addition. This competition could be healthy for the region overall, potentially driving innovation, improving terms for local communities, and demonstrating that African countries don't have to accept the role of raw material suppliers in global value chains. Looking forward, Ghana faces both tremendous opportunities and significant challenges in realizing its bauxite ambitions. The opportunities are clear: massive mineral reserves, growing global demand for aluminum, and international partners ready to invest. The challenges are equally substantial: infrastructure gaps, capacity constraints, and the complex task of ensuring that foreign partnerships deliver genuine local benefits. Success will require several key elements. First, Ghana needs to invest heavily in supporting infrastructure, reliable power generation, efficient transportation networks, and modern port facilities. Second, the government must negotiate partnership agreements that include binding commitments to local value addition, technology transfer, and skills development. Third, there needs to be transparent and accountable management of revenues generated from the industry. Perhaps most importantly, Ghana's leaders must maintain a long-term perspective that prioritizes sustainable development over quick wins. This means resisting the temptation to rush into agreements that look good in the short term, but fail to deliver lasting benefits for Ghanaian citizens. The success or failure of Ghana's bauxite gamble will reverberate across Africa and beyond. Other resource-rich African countries are watching closely, looking for lessons they can apply to their own development challenges. International investors are also paying attention, as Ghana's experience will influence their approach to similar projects across the continent. What we're witnessing in Ghana is more than just a mining contract dispute or a shift in resource policy. It's a test case for Africa's ability to leverage its natural resource wealth in the modern global economy while maintaining meaningful sovereignty and ensuring broad-based development benefits. The cancellation of Rockshore International's $1.2 billion bauxite lease and the subsequent courting of international giants like Emirates Global Aluminum represents a calculated gamble. Ghana is betting that foreign partnerships can deliver the capital, technology, and market access needed to build a genuine aluminum industry faster and more effectively than domestic companies operating with limited resources. This gamble reflects broader questions that African leaders face in the 21st century. How do you balance resource sovereignty with the need for international investment? How do you ensure that natural resource wealth translates into broad-based development rather than just benefiting political and business elites? How do you position your country competitively in global value chains while maintaining control over your economic destiny? The answers to these questions will shape not just Ghana's future, but the trajectory of African development more broadly. If Ghana succeeds in building an integrated aluminum industry that creates jobs, generates revenues, and serves as a foundation for broader industrialization, it will provide a powerful model for other African countries to follow. If, however, Ghana's bauxite resources end up simply feeding new forms of extraction with limited local benefits, it will serve as a reminder of how difficult it remains for African countries to escape the resource curse that has constrained development for decades. For those of us who believe in Africa's potential and the vision of leaders like Ibrahim Traoré who prioritize genuine African development and regional solidarity, Ghana's bauxite experiment deserves our attention and support. The stakes are high, the challenges are real, but the opportunities for transformative change are enormous. The question now is whether Ghana's leaders have the vision, negotiating skills, and political will to structure partnerships that truly serve Ghanaian and African interests. The next few years will tell us whether this bold gamble pays off or becomes another cautionary tale in Africa's complex relationship with its natural resource wealth. What do you think? Can Ghana successfully balance foreign investment with local development needs? Will this partnership model work for other African countries facing similar challenges? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective on this crucial issue for African development. And if you found this analysis valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We're committed to bringing you the stories that matter for Africa's future, the ones that mainstream media often overlooks or oversimplifies. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep supporting African progress and sovereignty.